I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is all the mods did. Now, I do want to dive into another mod that can get kind of complicated, and that is going to be Extreme Reactors today. This is going to involve a few different steps, but also the collaboration of the Productive Bees mod and also the Mystical Agriculture mod to make this process as smooth as possible. Now, without making this mod seem overly complicated, I do want to mention that there is a book that you can actually look at and everything is nice and explained there, which is very, very nice for this mod. But there's also a quest line in here that does a pretty decent job of explaining how the Extreme Reactors mod works. Now, things that I will mention and some nice tips, just skip the first stage of the Extreme Reactors. You don't need to build a small size reactor. Build one as big as you can and make sure to fill it, at least in this particular case, in this mod pack, fill it with complete fuel rods. The whole thing needs to be filled with fuel rods because today we're not making an efficient reactor. No. We're going to be trying to make the most inefficient reactor because we actually need the byproducts to be able to complete the All the Mod star. Now, why do I say skip? Well, because this is typically what your first reactor would look like. And if you're going to use this to create the cyanite that we need to basically jumpstart the whole process, it's going to take you a very long time to get the initial cyanite needed to create either your bee or your mystical agriculture crops. Now, thankfully, because we're making something inefficient, we don't have to worry about moderators at all. So the whole interior, like I said, is just going to be filled with fuel rods. So how I mentioned earlier, we're kind of limited by using the basic kind of quote unquote basic reactor parts. And that's because you can only build up to a certain size. So it is probably best if you have started where I'm starting right now to simply just jump to the reinforced version. And all of the reinforced stuff we are going to essentially need autocrafts for. And that way we can just make this upon demand. It is going to be a little bit more expensive making these. They all require steel. And technically with the ore generation that I have, we already have graphite that's constantly being produced, like a ton of it. But yes, all of this is going to be required. It is a little bit more expensive, but believe me, it's going to be so worth it. Because I don't know about you, but at the moment, I don't really need more power. I essentially just need these resources and byproducts that this is producing to be able to eventually get to Insanite. Now, something I do want to recommend if you want a basic full in-depth tutorial of all of the individual components of this, be sure to check out my All the Mods 9 playthrough, and you can just simply search ChosenArchitect Extreme Reactors, and you're going to most likely find that video where he builds a massive setup that essentially contains all of the components needed in order to progress through this pack. But today I'm going to try and simplify that approach, and I want to make the setup for it a whole lot simpler. Now, my starting reactor is going to be 19 tall, and it's going to be a 9x9. And that's just big enough to fit in this entire room. And this reactor is going to be producing waste. That is its primary goal. Now, I do want to show this because I have had people in the past say that, oh, Chosen just cheats in things, which I find absolutely ridiculous considering that, I mean, I'm literally crafting it right here. I mean, it just seems so weird for somebody to think that, but I do know a few people do. And just in case you were wondering, no, I actually do spend 4 hours literally sitting here crafting all of the components. Like, it takes hours to record some of these videos sometimes. Just wanted to put that out there. And yeah, this one episode is probably going to take me several hours to record, let alone as many hours as it actually took to get the MI stuff done. Because I mean, at this point, I am sitting at 8.73 days of playtime, and that is with no AFK. Yeah, this is a single player world. Now, I guess at this point, let's go ahead and get some of the reactor components in. So before I start putting in the frames, we're going to put our solid access ports. And these should allow us to set one as an input and one as an outlet. So you can see right here, we have those options, inlet and outlet right here. And we definitely want it to eject waste, which is the thing we're actually after. So I'm going to hook this into our applied energistic system, and then in the middle, we're going to have this. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about explosions within this setup. Like an explosion in here sounds awful, but this is not something that we have to worry about, thankfully. And so it's just a matter of setting all of these up and making sure the entirety of this thing is filled to the brim with rods. Once all of these are in, I'm going to place in my control rods just like so. Oh wait, yeah, there we go. They just look like they're off. I'm hoping that the building gadget here can handle this well. Looks like it's doing good so far. Perfect. And all of them are in. And now I just got to get the glass in on the walls. And I think the construction sticks can do this. Yeah. Okay. So yes, it will fill all the way around so long as I at least have the sides. Yes, there we go. And I have at least the bottom sections done. Looking pretty good so far. And once complete, the multi-block will form. And I think that is it. Yeah, the glass seems to have formed and everything looks good. So let's go ahead and kick this on as fast as possible. Thankfully, we can use uranium. So uranium, and that will get automatically sent into here and should start slowly but surely filling this up. I bet some speed upgrades or acceleration upgrades will make this a little bit faster at sending in the product. Just making sure that goes in there. Perfect. So now we can see this going up, and this doesn't use water or anything like that. If you're familiar with bigger reactors, this is pretty similar to that setup. But there we go. So this is going to slowly fill up, and as soon as it's full, let's go ahead and kick this on, and it's going to start generating waste. Now, this is the rate that we're wanting. We want a high millibucket rate. So 3 millibuckets per tick of waste that is currently being generated, and we can start to see that waste build up in here, and that should start producing cyanite ingots, which is what we want. And there's our first cyanite ingot, and we just want to run a cable over here for now. And we want this to be an import bus. And this is where we're going to have to keep an eye out on this, because we need a few of these cyanite to be able to actually get started with this mod. This is where the true power of everything starts to unlock. And so we need to find a way between bees and mystical agriculture to generate a ton of cyanite. And one of the first stops in our bee progression is by simply making a Cree bee. I love this thing, by using TNT on it. And this is going to allow us to make a radioactive bee. Okay, but not that kind of radioactive, right? This is actually a good one. And perfect. We have just enough cyanite to make at least one bee and also one pedestal, essentially, or one item for the bee to, or what is it called? The pollination block? Yes, one pollination block. So I got to be careful with this. So let's go ahead and now use one of our radioactive bees. I'm going to place that down. Use the cyanite block on it. Okay, and now we have effectively really started this whole process. So cage, let's go ahead and put you in here. And now I have the bee, so I can go over to my other side. These are all linked together, so I can just put this in here. Bam, there is our bee. And get some upgrades in here, and we should be ready to go. And I think this one is pretty straightforward as far as what the combs produce. Like if I accelerate the hive here, we should start seeing, hopefully cyanite. Yeah, cyanite be produced. And then if we look over here, it's producing, yeah, just regular cyanite, which as of right now has nowhere to go, but we need to give it a place to go. And voila, there we go. Cyanite produced, and we can generate a ton more of it now by making more bees. It is crazy how like quick this all like starts to take off. There we go. And so now I am going to actually turn off this reactor. And I think what I'm also going to do is I'm going to pull out the waste here. We actually do not want this sent anymore, and we just want to start ejecting the fuel out of the reactor if I can. Yeah, this is all of the fuel, trying to get as much of it out as possible. And there we go. So that should be now empty, and we can now repurpose this for our next tier. So now this next step is where things get a little bit more complicated, because we're going to be requiring a few more multi-blocks. But the main thing we're worried about is just simply upgrading our fuel so that way we can get a new bee that is going to grant us another bee and then another bee. Right? So that way we can do some chemical processes down the road that are going to allow us to generate these two resources that we're ultimately after. So the reprocessor is our next machine. This allows us to essentially convert our cyanide into the next tier, which is going to be the plutonium. Now there is a bee for this, but of course we have to create it first before we can make a bee. Well, kind of, because you can see right here, a cyanite bee can technically be turned directly into a plutonium bee, which is actually kind of nice, utilizing a reprocessor, kind of skipping some steps. Now, the way this is built, essentially we're going to have a controller right here, and then on the bottom, this is where we are going to need a reprocessor collector, and it's important that this does go on the bottom. Now, on the top, we are going to need a waste injector. This is actually where we would send our initial input, which would be, for example, like the cyanide that is going to go in here. Now, we're also going to need water that is going to need to be fed into this, which is going to be through the fluid injector. So I can just place that here, for example. And then we'll also need to power this multi-block. So I might as well place a place to give it power down here. And then down here, we can put where we're going to get our ultimate product. And the rest of this can just be simply filled with reactor or the reprocessor glass. And once we have all of that done, we just simply build it. And you'll know it's correct if the multi-block forms and the glass looks nice. So I can now slap some power onto this and give it some water. And I think we can start to process this stuff. I think by default though, like cyanite would be the thing that we would originally put in here to be processed. And so if I put cyanite in here, I think this will start the process. And if we turn it on, we can see that actually dropping down in here, and it should produce, which we can open up here, plutonium. Now, of course, I want to make the bee, so I think it's time to use a spawn egg in here. So now time to use some pokies here to grant me some genes. With a little bit of accelerating here, we can easily make ourselves a plethora of these bees. So to take all of these gene samples, turn them all into cyanide bees, this grants us the egg. Pretty straightforward, and man, so nice. Look at that. And voila, got myself some cyanide bee eggs. Now I'm still technically going to need some plutonium to be able, like at least, like what is it, 8 of them or 9 of them that we're gonna need. But yes, I can go ahead and start putting these in, turning this on, and that should give me an output. There we go, of a plutonium bee. Now, something I want to note with these plutonium bee eggs, I don't want to use all of them because it does look like there is a conversion on the item here with a cyanite bee that can convert them into a Ludicrite bee. Now, I don't remember if the bee actually has to come out of the hive to do the conversion. Like if I put this in here, will my cyanite bees actually convert this? I don't know. They may actually need, oh, nope, it does produce it, and it produces it pretty fast. Okay, wow. Now hear me out. I can't use this bee just yet, but we do have it. Now, honestly, this whole progression definitely feels like it is directed towards bees, even though this is towards setting up the reactor and stuff. I honestly feel like if you do not go this bee route, it is going to take you a tremendous amount of time to be able to produce the amount of resources needed for the Altamont Star towards the end. Now, this is where we actually get to dive into another machine. To be able to make the Ludicrite for the Ludicrite bee, which we are going to need, I keep saying we are going to need because, I mean, we are technically going to need it here. We need cyanite in here. Now, this doesn't automatically liquefy our different components. So this is where we actually need a new machine that will liquefy things like cyanite for us. And that wonderful multi-block is called a fluidizer. Yes, it takes a ingot and converts it into a fluid. Now, as an example, the multi-block can look like this, but it can also look like a 3x3. So we can actually make this a pretty small for our first initial setup. Now for this setup, I'm just going to be building the 3x3 version because we need to send a item in, and then we're going to output a fluid and just send the fluid into this reprocessor over here. Because like I said, eventually bees are going to be running the entire show. On the back, we will provide power. On the front, we will put the controller. And on the sides, we'll have an output for fluid, which will go right here, and then an injector for solids, which will go right there. The rest of this can simply be casings, and I think even on the top, we might even be able to put a glass to be able to view inside. Let's see, does the glass work? Yes, the glass works, and so now we have a port to be able to see inside. But yes, this is the whole setup here, and let's see, we want to turn cyanite essentially into a liquid. So we'll put that in here, and we can put a gate on the back. There we go, to give it some power, and then we'll turn it on, and that is then going to start creating the cyanite fluid, which we do need for our next process. Now, thankfully, these machines do allow you to void things that have gone into them already. So in this particular case, if I use this to break these pipes, we can get rid of that water because we don't need that anymore. And inside of here, we can actually trash it. So you can void all of the fluids that existed in the multi-block. And it's like for this very purpose that we're doing right now, to be able to now hot swap this machine so we don't have to build multiple. So we just need to get one fluid from here into here, and there we go. Now we can actually start making the next step, which is to be able to work with the Ludicrite. And just like the other ones, we now send plutonium in here to be able to get that. And we now have our plutonium bee, so we can start this process, and we just got to get enough of this. Once I start, there we go. Actually, it's producing plutonium ingots. No, we need to take those out. now we should be processing it. Perfect. And there's our output. And then once we have this, we can technically start using our B here. And I know this might seem strange, right? We're essentially doing Extreme Reactors B edition. And yes, I mean, kind of. That is kind of what we're doing. Now, for example, I can take my Ludicrite B, toss that down here, capture that bad boy, and we can create ourselves a Ludicrite block, I think. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just uses the ingot form. Maybe there's not a block of this. Does the Ludicrite B actually use this? Now wait, there is a block. Oh, it requires an in crystal. Oh, the sneaky. So I guess technically it only requires 8 to be able to make that. Very interesting. But nevertheless, here we go. Let's put this inside of here and we'll go ahead and get our B in. Perfect. Now there's still more Bs to unlock here, but we now need to go back to our reactor and we need to start sending plutonium into this reactor. So let's make sure that is going in there, and that should be filling up with our plutonium now. And once it's filled up, we can then start this reactor. Do I have enough plutonium? Yes, I think this just takes a little bit of time to ramp up. There it goes. And we can go ahead and turn that on even while it's filling up. It's not a big deal, but we want to produce a byproduct. Yes. And this new byproduct is actually going to be called magentite. And this is actually what is next in our list. And once we have enough, we can convert a plutonium B to a magentite B and also produce more there. And we are going to need this particular B, as this is how we go into the radiculite spawn B. And it's at this point you may be thinking this is quite ridiculous. And yes, I will agree, especially for the amount of power that this is kind of generating. I mean, this is generating pretty good power. That's 1 million FE per tick. But you know what? Then this whole thing's not even technically filled up. But yes, you do blow through this material very, very quickly. Oh, and yeah, I am just voiding power. I never put a power tap on this. But hey, look, our first magentite. Now, some of you may be wondering, why haven't I been trying to tick accelerate these machines? And that's because, well, I have tried. This does not work on these machines, so I can't use the time wand. However, you might be able to use the souls. I actually haven't tried that yet. So yeah, just to prove a point, it doesn't seem to be doing anything, at least if you power the controller block. And so voila, magentite ingots. Yeah, this one actually turns directly into a block, which is nice. But keep in mind, I'm still going to need another block to be able to actually use it for the flower for the bee. So let's get converting. There's our plutonium, and then we just need to slap that on there. Bam, hit it with the sturdy casing. Ah, we're good. Now this bee I also want running, but I also wanted producing some genes because we are going to need this particular bee, the magentite bee, right? To be able to produce the radiculite, right? So the radiculite is going to be needed with the Ludicrite bee, basically converting it. The Ludicrite bee we have right here. So all I really need to do is speed this up enough to get those beautiful gene samples. That way we can take that and upgrade. And there we go, a magentite bee, toss it in there. Perfect. And we just simply wait for the bee to finish up. And then to move on to the next step, do some magic here by placing this spawn egg in here. And I'm assuming, yep, that will just take a second after accelerating it. And now we have a radiculite bee. And boy, this is starting to get ridiculous. And now we're essentially repeating processes. So now we need to produce some magentite fluid the same way we did our cyanite. And then we need to send the Ludicrite ingots then to produce those ingots. And once we have that, the bee is just ready to go. And just like I mentioned before, there we go. The magentite ingots turning into fluid and then just simply outputting the radiculite. Now to make the radiculite block, it does need a nether star. Ah, yes, a good old nether star for this. But without further ado, there's our bee. And voila, we now have a radiculite bee with the block inside of the slab. So now we are coming to a close. Technically, there are going to be a couple of things that we have to make. These are the final components. Now, this is where things do change just a little bit, where instead of inserting a item, we're going to be inserting fluids. First, I have to create that fluid, and that is going to be Verderium. I hope I'm saying that right. Verderium, yes. And we're going to be making Insanite with this and also Insanite. So both of these do require rossinite, and rossinite is a byproduct of processing this fuel. We have to make this fuel though, and we are going to be processing that fuel in this reactor, meaning that we will no longer have this access port right here that is going to be for solids. Instead, we need to convert it into fluids. And then our output here is no longer going to be solids as well. Instead, we've got to flip it to fluids. And for this, we'll use a fluid injector port, and we'll have this set up here and here. Of course, we'll flip one of them over. This will end up being outlet mode, and this one's input. This just allows us to send fluids in which we can use our applied energetics system to handle. And we're also going to have to modify our fluidizer. And I think this will work if we just simply add a injector onto the top. So that way we have a solid ejector over here and another ejector here. And we'll just wrap around some exporters here where we have to fill it with a couple of different products to be able to make this right here. And I think one of the best ways to do this on the solid mixing front is by using the blocks. So we can use like a block of plutonium and a block of uranium, and that will combine up and give us plenty of this material. So let's go ahead and try this. I'm going to place my exporters on the side, just like that. And I guess it really doesn't matter. One needs plutonium, so we'll send that in with a crafter card so it can craft those up. And then on this side, we'll put uranium with a crafter card, and that should start to fill this up. And if we turn this on, is this going to work, or does it need to be a bigger multi-block? That was something I was also kind of concerned about. I don't see anything starting. Do I have to change a mode? That is a questionable thing. Interesting. I think all of this does work, but yeah, the block form, there may be actually a restriction here, just simply due to the output limitation on the output side being only 4 buckets at a time. And so I don't think the recipe was able to complete, but I did reformat this a little bit here. But yeah, I mean, I guess essentially I'm going to be feeding it the ingot forms instead of this. So no need to have crafters here, as we're just going to send it basic and it'll probably be fast enough. Now, this next part might seem a little bit strange, but if I put a bus on here, we should be able to read the inventory of this tank. And if I partition this, then it's definitely reading how much is in this tank. And so with this on, this will fill up, and we should see this allowing us to use an exporter over here to technically export out of this container, like with a storage bus. This is a really cool part of applied energetics, and it's kind of a neat little trick that you can use, so that way you don't need to create like a special inventory just to simply move one individual component. So in here, I can go ahead and see what fluid we have, search it up from Extreme Reactors, which is this fluid right here, and just bring it over, and that should start to insert this into the container. It should. And yes, it is such a small quantity, we can't even see it, but it is going up. We can see it's 0.34% full on this massive reactor here. Now for the output fluid, I do want to store it in a storage bus, but I do want a buffer container for it before we actually put that on there. And to do this, I'm going to be using a pipe to send this fluid out. We need to make sure this mode is on the outlet mode, and which it is. So keep in mind, this process right here is to produce the rossinite. So if I go ahead and I start this reactor, we should start immediately producing rossinite. Even though we have a little bit in here, this is going to start producing. And I don't think it's technically consuming more than we are currently producing, so it will over time build up. And that's exactly what we need. We need this right here to now start our processes. So let's get a storage bus on here, and we'll make sure on that storage bus that we set our filter here. So on it, we want to make sure we set that partition to rossinite, if it'll let me. There we go. And so now this will only ever allow to insert into this machine, even though that's nothing we really need to worry about. But if we have other machines that are generating fluid, we don't want it sending into here if this empties. So now back to the reprocessor. Ah, that's right. And that needs to be used to make the Insanite. So we need to use the benitoite. This is such a painful word for me to say. This you can actually get inside of the nether. We're going to need a little bit of it. But yes, we can mine that up and we can combine it here to produce the Insanite. And this, the other material, yeah, this one's pretty easy. We just need the radiculite, which we have tons of at this point. So now we should just be able to cable up. So let's go ahead and add a cable over here. I'm just going to run this straight on this side and then use an exporter to export that rossinite that is being produced. And since we have it on that storage bus, that should then send that as the fluid. We see it going in, and we can start our process by just dumping some of this in here. So there we go. I don't know why one at a time went. I can't access the interface when that happens. But there it is. Let's turn this off for right now. And let's see, can I access this again? There we go. Let's throw the whole stack in there and then turn it on and just let it rip. And it's just going to start producing this material for us. So while that's processing up, let's head into the nether and let's do a little bit of mining. Now, inside of the nether, this stuff can be a little bit difficult to find, so whenever you do find some, definitely make sure to silk touch it. That way, we can just scry the thing, and we can be able to see it in X-ray. So, let's go ahead and activate the scry, place that block in, and give ourselves the ability to see this through walls. Ah, and man, we are going to be able to gather quite a bit of this, I think, just by scouring the roof, once we're able to see where they're all located. It's also kind of give us a good idea of like how many of these exist. Yeah, I mean, this is a really great tool for allowing us to see like how many exist in the world like this. Now, I don't think I'm gonna need like an awful lot of it, but yeah, I sorted my inventory so that way this would be like technically the only thing that goes in my inventory. Looks like we're gathering quite a bit of it. I mean, I do have Fortune 8 on my pick, so that is helping quite a bit. You could quarry for this as well, which I did in all the mods 9. I ended up just using a builder to mine for this. But because we have this bee, I don't think we're going to need as much of it as I needed back then. So I guess, perfect. I'm going to take about 5 out of here, get a hopper, and just let a hopper, honestly, pipe this in from the top. I think that'll be more than enough. So we can go ahead and store that much while I work on some bees, because I still got a bit more to do. But there we go. There's our Insanite, and there's our Insanite that is slowly producing. And so we just need to get ourselves a spawn egg for the Insanite. This one's going to require the Radiculite bee. And so a little bit of pokey on this. I should be able to get at least one gene sample pretty quick from accelerating it. And I'll just have to watch for it over here. And after getting that, I need to do the exact same thing over here, just like this. So that way I can get myself a Ludicrite gene sample. And honestly, I wish I would have known about this comb thing sooner. This has like been a thing for a long time where you can use like a lower percentage. I didn't know it was based off the percentage of success every loop. I didn't know that was the case. Like the amount of time I could have saved myself, past self, if only future self known this. I mean, this is ridiculous. And this makes actually farming bees and also makes the pokey like make way more sense now. Like this is just a game changer, honestly. So now for the fun, we don't have the Ananite. Wow, I cannot say this for the life of me. I do not have this bee yet to do the conversion for the Insanite, but if we take a look at this, we can actually get that pretty quickly with our Radiculite bee. So the Radiculite bee is over here. So which spawn egg is this going to need? That's right, it needs the Ludicrite one. So we'll simply put that in there. Give this a little bit of a bump here to speed that process up. And then it converted it right there, and we have the bee ready to go. Also, we already have all of the stuff to make the blocks for this. This does require a block of netherite, though, to make that block for that bee. But technically, this bee is ready to go. We just need to, I believe, let's just make sure before I mess this up. Yeah, we just need to grab our bee here before it flies away. Get it in with an upgrade, a simulation upgrade. Let's see, we need like 4 of them, I think, for right now. We can throw those in here, and we're ready to go. So we'll put the bee in, just like that. Now we have the Insanite bee, and we'll put its spawn block in, just like this. And whenever we put this bee egg in here, this should convert that bee egg, just like that, into the Insanite version. Oh boy, and things are really going to start ramping up. Now we're also producing the Insanite. Goodness, it's so many Anite, so many ites going on right now. But yes, this is going to bring it right over here. And then we have one more slot for one more thing. And by this point, we probably have enough for an entire block, I hope. Yeah, we have 20 of them all ready to go. And that, my friends, is the insane process of producing Insanite, and now fully automating this. And to be able to make the Insanite block, we then need to use wow, I cannot, you're gonna butcher me in the comments, I'm sure. The Ananite. There we go. We now have that ready to send in for the bees. An Insanite block is now done. It's gonna get its own chamber right here. We'll put that in. Perfect. And then we can put the bee in after we catch it in a cage. And let's go ahead and throw this down. There we go. It's green just like the wood. Very, very pretty. And yeah, we need some more upgrades. You know, I'm going to take 2 of these upgrades for now. Toss them over here. And just simply put the bee in. And just let this bee go. just go for it. Just start producing all of the Insanite combs, so that way we now have the Insanite ingots being produced, and we can go ahead and call it a day by placing this over here in our storage. My goodness, that was a process, but you know what? It felt so much easier than the last time, simply because of my newfound knowledge of the bees. And now this may sound absolutely ridiculous, but it's the fact that we technically don't even need these reactors anymore. We don't need any of this infrastructure now that we have the bees. It's now just passively producing all of the materials that we essentially needed for the All the Mod Star. And where do we need this for the All the Mod Star, you might be asking? Well, it was needed for the Philosopher's Fuel, which is the product all the way up here. So yes, we didn't need to technically automate it. We could have passively done it all, but now we have the ability to make it in the future, and we can make as many as we ever need. And that, my friends, has been the ultimate blending of technology and bees. Yes, productive bees. And I would say that it has made me very, very productive today. And I hope it made you productive as well. And hopefully you enjoyed today's episode and learned something new from it. Of course, if you did, be sure to smack that subscribe button if you haven't already. And well, give this video a huge thumbs up. Hopefully this didn't drive you insanite. And of course, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that huge thanks is going to go out to... Bam! Master TJ. Thank you, by the way, for your amazing support and choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting me in one of the best ways possible. Definitely check out that Discord if you haven't already, and also check me out over on Twitch, twitch.tv/ChosenArchitect, where I do a live stream about 3 days a week. And if you've made it this far in the episode, you may enjoy that content over there, especially if you're looking for more. Also, if you don't like watching the lives, you can always check out my second channel, which is Chosen Live here on YouTube, which is where I publish all of my VODs after the fact. So if that's something you enjoy, definitely check that out as well. And guys, I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching.